All right. So I think we're on, gosh, video, I don't know, 11 or something. And this video I've been really looking forward to doing. It's been a little while. I'm making the custom gas tank. And if you recall, if you've been watching this series on the historical inspired bike build, I had originally tried to, or at least wanted to do the gas tank out of a fire extinguisher. That did not work out. So for size purposes and also the type of the metal, I decided to switch over to two used propane cans. And I tried a couple different methods. I tried those aluminum welds that you get like Harbor Freight and some other places. You basically heat up an aluminum stick and try to do some welding that way. That did not work. Not only for the little storage tank in the back of the gas tank, but also for where the tap is going to come out for the gas supply to get down to the engine. So what I decided to do is scrap that entire idea of doing the aluminum weld stuff. I had hoped that would work out, but I think that these propane cans aren't aluminum, so they're not bonding for some reason. I had them nice and clean, but they just weren't bonding. So I switched to Plan B and switched over to JB Weld to do some of the finish stuff in addition to the just regular welding. So what I'm doing here is just doing a little tap, putting some threads in there, and that's for the shutoff valve or with the peacock or whatever they call that, to be threaded in there. And the front part of the gas tank here is actually going to hold the gas, and then the back, again, if you were watching the prior videos, is kind of like a little storage compartment. I put hinges and stuff on there. So this video is going to show a ton of different stuff, but it's all related to this gas tank. And you saw in the opening part of the video the inspiration, which is kind of like a cafe racer style historical bike that has kind of like this elongated gas tank, as opposed to the short and stubby gas tanks that sit on top of the bar that come with the kit. Because keep in mind, I'm not fabbing all this stuff. It does come as a kit, but I am doing a lot of custom fab as well. So the typical gas tank that comes with these kits sits up on top of the main bar of the bike, especially if you have like a boy's bike as opposed to like a girl's bike. So this gas tank actually hangs below the bar. So I ran into some size issues because you got to get the gas tank in there and still have sufficient clearance to get past the portion of the top of the engine that goes below it. So took quite a bit of measuring and going back and forth and cutting and whatnot, but all that was covered in the previous videos. And finally did get it welded together, and I did do some epoxy as well just to make sure to put the two ends together. So this video is basically going to be showing the finishing of the gas tank. And so I just used the Bondo that you would get at your local automobile parts place. I think AutoZone in this case, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I don't do this all the time, so I think I made the mistake of getting the fast dry, which made it kind of tricky. But either way, when you're going through this stuff, it's pretty similar. You get the main part of the Bondo, and then you squirt in kind of like a little hardener, which is that red part. Mix it all together to make sure it's the right consistency. I think it's like a 50-to-1 ratio, but I mean, unless you're out there with measuring devices or whatever, you just kind of learn to put a drop per certain amount of the base material. And you just smoosh it in there and try to make it as smooth as possible, because the goal is not to have to go back and not sand as much as possible thereafter. So this stuff was the fast setting Bondo. I'm not a professional at this at all, so I probably should have not gotten that fast setting, but it worked out. We worked with it. It's fine. You just got to work really quickly, because especially if you put in too much hardener, which I think I did on that first run, it sets up really quick and too fast for my feeble skill set to get on there. But you just want to make sure everything is quote unquote waterproof, sealed in there, airproof, before you start putting this stuff on, the Bondo on, because the Bondo is really not going to make it more airtight or whatever. And I made sure all that was done properly, so the gas isn't going to leak out of there. This is just the top coating to make it look nice and uniform and smooth before you do the painting. So, of course, there's all kinds of sanding, and the worst skill set that you have for doing the Bondo, you're going to be sanding a lot more. And unfortunately, that's me. So if you're better at doing the Bondo, you got less to sand, on the second part of it. But if you're not, don't worry about it. You can sand it down. Just takes a little bit longer time. It's no big deal. So, and if you have like a small project like this, it's not like it takes all day or anything. So fast forwarded this quite a bit. A lot of sanding, before you spray paint or paint with anything. The prep is like 90% of any job. This kind of stuff, metal, even doing like flooring, painting on walls. It's all about the prep. I mean, literally all about the prep. And, usually if all the conditions are okay, the paint will just adhere properly. That's just what it does. So yeah, lots and lots and lots of sanding here on this, and it's still looking pretty ugly. But in my mind's eye, I can kind of see this thing fitting in there really nice. Made that angled cut in the front, and that fits in really nice to make it like a custom look as in the front of the bicycle where the other bar comes down, the other support bar. So it fits in there real nice. But yeah, so, and again, these are just two regular, $3.50 propane cans that you would use for soldering and stuff, like for plumbing purposes. And then once you get done with all of the regular Bondo, you can go over it with some of the glazing compound. It's kind of like just a lighter, finer Bondo, so to speak, and comes in like a little squirt tube, kind of like what you would find at I don't know, to brushing your teeth, for toothpaste, kind of like that consistency. And that glazing compound is the reddish material that you see here. So when you're doing like the bulk of the Bondo, you want to get in there, and you can use like a lower grade or lower number sandpaper, like an 80 grit or a 120 or something. And then you can, go up to a higher grits if you want. If you want to stick with that, that's fine. But sometimes it's nicer and a little bit easier to get a real nice finish if you use that glazing compound, and then switch over to an even higher number sandpaper, like a, I don't know, 240 or 250, whatever that was. And then later on, I actually go up to like 1,000 grit, which is super fine. And sometimes I use that in between, like the after you put like a primer or a paint or something on there, to like smooth out any kind of like painting imperfections. So you can put as much time or a lower amount of time into this. It just depends what kind of finish, what kind of look you want at the end. I wanted this part to look nice and smooth and shiny, so I went ahead and used that glazing compound, and then got it as smooth as possible before putting the paint on there. Okay, so I'm just using like literally 99-cent or $1, spray can here of black spray paint. It's the generic kind, like Dupla Color or something like that. Just got it like on the bottom of the shelf at Home Depot, and some other places sell it for, I don't know, $2 or something. So this is not special spray paint at all, but I put a lot of different coats on here, and what I like to do is make very long, even passes with the spray paint, and if at all possible, try to paint with anything like this in a horizontal manner. So you can see how this tank is laid out flat. It's not like up and down in a vertical manner. And if you do that, and the paint that you're putting on there, it will settle in with gravity in a downward way and spread out horizontally. Whereas if you have, you know, whatever you're painting, in this case the tank, up and down in a vertical manner, you can have like streaks, and the gravity will just pull it down, especially if you accidentally get a little bit too much spray paint on there at one time, so it, you know, has more material to kind of like just flow. So even with this just, you know, completely generic bottom of the barrel 99-cent spray can, shake can, you can get a pretty good result if you just take your time. And you can even see this is just the first coat here, you know, keeping it shaken. Yeah, what's that called? Quick something? I don't know. It's cheap. So while that was drying, I went over to the 3D printer, and there's a little clip that I'm going to put on there, a little latch hasp, and to keep the storage compartment lid locked into place a little bit. It kind of already has a little bit of resistance to it, but I wanted to be able to put like just a little latch on there to latch it down so whatever's in there doesn't come flying out as you're going down the road. So I do have some other videos about 3D printing on my channel if you're interested. It's a pretty fun hobby, and you can print whatever you want. And so what you do is, you know, this thing basically melts this plastic. You could do like ABS or PLA, something like that. It's plastic and standard that will fit your machine, whichever particular one you happen to have. This is just a completely integral model. It's an Ender 3D Pro, and it melts that plastic line and then squirts it into place with hundreds or thousands of different other lines that you can see there into whatever you're making. And you can design this stuff. If you were familiar with like CAD design, you can design your own, or there's like a bunch of open source stuff. This was just open source. You literally just download the file on like a little you know, USB or micro memory chip, and there it is, all put together. It's kind of neat. It's just a little bit of a little latch. I think they call that a hasp, but it's a little latch just to keep the lid down on the storage compartment of the tank. So, you know, I'm trying to make or fabricate as much of this as possible. There's the inspiration again, and my wife has a Cricut machine, so her and my daughter printed off the letters for the tank with the Cricut machine. I'm not going to go over a lot of this, but that's how I got the letters, and they did a really nice job. So I happen to live in Cleveland, right outside of Cleveland in Ohio, so I thought it would be kind of neat if the bike had that like pedigree for where I am locally, regionally. I guess that there were bikes like this back in the day that were from the Cleveland Motorcycle Company, I'm assuming. I don't know, this was a long time ago, 100 years ago. So there used to be all kinds of motorcycle companies, but, you know, the big boys won out eventually, Harley and Indian, you know, those kind. And then later the Japanese and the primarily, I think, German bikes came over, some English. So, but in America, you know, like Harley and Indian kind of were the big boys after all the other little shops closed down or were, you know, merged or acquired. So I just thought it was kind of neat. I was considering maybe doing like an Indian or a Harley, but I think there's plenty of those out there. So I think this one's going to be somewhat unique. And also, again, I live right outside of Cleveland in Ohio, so I thought it would be appropriate. So I got this little clip that I 3D printed, and because the tank itself is round, it wasn't fitting on there exactly how I wanted. So I decided to take off the one of the parts of the hasp or latch there, and just substitute the plastic 3D printed portion for a metal portion, and that will enable it to open and close with a little bit more flexibility in terms of like going for that round, application, as opposed to like a door or something like that, which is just flat with both ends. So the door would be flat, and then so whatever the balance of the trim or whatever you're affixing it to. So again, this thing is round. So I went with just took a piece of little metal and bent it into place to substitute it for that other little U-shaped portion of the latch there. So, and that gives it some ability to go around in a arc, I guess you would say. And I'm not going to drill this thing in. It's kind of small, so I'm just mixing up a little bit of JB Weld to put that on there, and that's fine. This thing really is not meant to act as like a security device or something like that. It's really just meant to keep this door down just a little bit as it's running down the road when you're operating it, or that kind of thing, so it just doesn't pop open and your contents fly out. So and like I said earlier, for some reason this has a natural tendency just to want to stay closed anyway, so you have to apply a little bit of force to get it open. So yeah, I went ahead and trimmed a little bit of the bottom of the print there, the 3D printed hasp latch, and because it was sticking out a little farther, again probably because of the radius nature of the round tank, just to make it sit better, so it wouldn't have a part that was kind of like floating out in air. But this turned out pretty well, and it does what it's supposed to do. And again, I made it, so trying to do as much custom stuff that I'm not just buying pieces and parts that somebody else made or came from a foreign country. So this is my custom bike, not some bike that I can just buy a bunch of parts for. So these stickers that my wife made on her Cricut machine, they come just kind of like on a vinyl sticker type of deal on a roll, and they have a top layer that is really handy because you just peel that off. You can put all the letters in a row, and it's clear. You can see where you're putting it, and then just gently take it off at an angle, and you're left with whatever your lettering is. Really look nice. And I took that green kind of goldish color from the sample bike, and that was the inspiration. That was why the color choice is there. I think that was company colors. So the inspiration bike is green. Mine's going to be primarily black and silver, but I'm going to have like the green letter and maybe some other kind of like this green and gold in there, to give it that, relation back to the actual Cleveland bikes and the Cleveland colors. Because again, it's not a historically accurate bike. It's more inspired by the old bikes. So this is just the other side, just peeling off that protective layer, make sure it's, level or whatever, so the wording looks nice, and just gently put those stickers on there, and they do a pretty good job. So there it is. There's the little latch or hasp for the storage compartment, and that's in the back portion. Opens and closes, no problem. You can put all kinds of stuff in there. It's got a lot of room. It's just a piece. This is pliers I'm putting in there, for example, just to show the room. And nice and tight and firm in there. That door comes down, and then the latch again just kind of holds it in place from bouncing open or something. But I'm really looking forward to getting this thing installed on the bike. I think this is the centerpiece. I took a lot of time sanding it down and repainting it, etc. So this is the best I could do. I hope you like it. Again, like and subscribe. Really appreciate it, and hope you guys are liking this project. I hope just to have a few more couple videos to get this whole project done and take it for a test drive.